Last week was a holiday, so it's good to see, good to be here again. So before we start, I would like to invite everyone to our Christmas special event that we'll be having December 8th in about 3 or 4 weeks. 3 weeks. It's the same place that we had our barbecue at the Shriners. So that's the first time that we're going to host our kind of more winter event there. We have indoor space, there's a fireplace, so I think it's going to be a different and warming experience. So invite everyone December 8th. We'll post a little bit more information, and we won't be here for our regular service. We'll be all there. So our talk will be there, and after that, the same way that we do here, after the talk, we'll be celebrating Christmas amongst ourselves. Good. So, to start today, I would like to use, as we're going to talk about the Sermon on the Mount later, I would like to talk about the Beatitudes, which is part of the Sermon on the Mount. It's a text from our daily bread, Francisco Cândido Xavier, by the Spirit Emmanuel, and the text is the Beatitudes, or as Bem-aventuranças in English. And the passage that Emmanuel will talk about is one from Jesus in Luke 6:22. Blessed are you when men hate you, when they exclude you, harm you, and reject your name as evil on account of the Son of Man. That's Jesus in Luke chapter 6, verse 22. The problem of the Beatitudes requires serious thought before it can be seen as resolved issue in the area of understanding. Jesus confers the credential of blessedness on followers who share in his afflictions and service. Nevertheless, we must point out that the Master regards sacrifice and suffering as instructive and redemptive blessings. Thus, it is crucial to be able to accept them. This or that person will be blessed for having brought goodness into the midst of material poverty, for finding happiness and simplicity and peace, and for knowing how to maintain a durable and divine hope in his or her heart. But what does sincere adherence to the sacred obligations of such a designation entail? In the guidance that characterizes his teachings, the Master is referring to the eternal Beatitudes. However, there are few who approach them with the full understanding of someone who is approaching an immense treasure. If visited by pain, most of the less favored on the earthly plane would rather complain and despair. If invited to demonstrate self-denial, they make improper demands, and instead of working peacefully, they lose themselves in the unworthy enterprises of unbridled ambitions. Jesus offers many Beatitudes. Only a rare few, however, really want them. That is why there are many poor and afflicted people who are in dire need in the world, but who are not yet blessed in heaven. So let us pray. So let's raise our thoughts, our sentiments, our feelings to God, our Father, to Jesus, our Master, to each of our guardian angels, and the spiritual team that guides this work, that guides all the efforts here at FSS. And first, as Jesus taught us, offer our gratitude to be here, our gratitude to be breathing and alive, and our gratitude for this place, the second home of love, and this opportunity that we have to understand more of the teachings and know and understand how we can apply that in each one of our lives. And let's ask that our meeting today and our reflections today can be blessed, can be guided by the spiritual team, and that we can remain in contact and aligned with the divine wisdom, with the divine love, and that we can reflect through the teachings, and hopefully we can leave here a little bit better than how we enter. May our meeting be blessed and full of love, serenity, and tranquility. So be it. All right. So today we're going to talk about the Sermon on the Mount, but not the Sermon on the Mount per se. We're going to talk about what happens before and in the back stages of the Sermon on the Mount. Who here doesn't know about this book called Boa Nova or Good News? Who doesn't know about it? No? Good. Awesome. So this book is by Francisco Cândido Xavier, by the Spirit Manual. And all the chapters here, it's all about the backstage. It's all about Humberto de Campos was a journalist, and after he discarnated, Chico Xavier psychographed, and there's a lot of teachings and a lot of explanations of why something happened and what was the preparation for something to be happened. So it's a beautiful book. Sonia has started doing a little bit of talks about Peter's denial, and I'm going to do a little bit, I won't go into too much into details, but hopefully I'll get to some good messages of what happened before the Sermon on the Mount, and very specifically what happened with Levi or Matthew. What is that Matthew was thinking about just before Jesus proclaimed the Sermon on the Mount, and how he had good intentions, but he was a little bit not in the right track. And we're going to see how Jesus did not say, "Oh, Levi, told you 100 times how you're not getting it." And how Jesus kind of acted as an educator, as a facilitator. And you're going to see how all of the Jesus demeanor and how Jesus approach, how we can reflect and we can ponder and say, yeah, maybe I got this wrong. And how we can see ourselves in Levi's behavior and Levi approaches, and how we are doing that, still doing that with others, and more importantly, with our own selves. So that's the goal of today. As I mentioned, so we're gonna be using the Good News or Boa Nova, and if you haven't seen it, Vanessa Anceloni, there is a channel in YouTube called Kardec Radio. She's great, and she has 30 days of the Good News, where every day, about 40-50 minutes, she talks about each chapter of this book. It's one of the few channels in English that talks about Spiritism, and I use a little bit of her reflections. So if you haven't heard Kardec Radio, a good place to learn Spiritism and learn a little bit of English as well. So, before we talk about specifically about this book, what do we know about Matthew or Levi? What do we know about his life? What do we know about why the book of Matthew is the first book of the gospel? There is a reason. Nothing happened by chance, but there is a reason that Levi, or it's interchangeably, I can never remember Levi, if Levi is a Hebrew name and Matthew was the Greek name, but it's either or. I can never remember that. But Levi and Matthew is used interchangeably. They're the same person. But who was Matthew?
It's not a brand of jeans. And it's not a brand of jeans.
No, it's not a brand of jeans. Yeah, Levi, not Levi's. Unless there's a lot of Levi, right? So they're Levi's. So who was Matthew?
Tax collector.
Tax collector. Yeah.
Not popular.
Not popular. I appreciate that. Tax collector that pays my salary as a local government employee. But yes, yeah, he was a tax collector. What does that mean, right, Andrea? Pays, yeah, tax are good, pays our salaries, yeah. But he was wealthier in two different senses. Wealthier, and he has a lot of knowledge as well, and also material resources, right? So he was one of the most skilled, for a lack of a better word, or the proper
Or educated.
educator, or he was the proper disciple to document the life of Jesus due to the resources that he had in terms of knowledge and material resources.
In the Chosen, there is a chapter, right? That he has his little pad or notebook, whatever, and he wants to leave it on the side to follow Jesus, and Jesus says, like, you might need that.
Yeah,
Bring it, yeah. But if we think about Old Testament, New Testament, we needed that transition, right? And we are going to see in the book of Matthew or Levi, there's a lot of passage and there's a lot of mention about the Old Testament. And also Levi was the proper one to make that connection, because the Old Testament said there is a Messiah that is coming, right? So he was the one in charge of doing that bridge between the Old Testament and the New Testament to really make sure that Jesus was the new Messiah as promised in the Old Testament. And more important is the Gospel of Matthew, if we look through it, is the Gospel where we have the most passages that talks about those that were excluded, that were suffering. And you're going to see the Sermon on the Mount is very much for those that were suffering and that were excluded at that time. And then that Gospel of Matthew, it's that one that brings, I'm not saying that he's the only one that brings hope, but it's focused and it's where we have most passages of hope for humanity for that time. And who knows, one of the biggest, for me personally, is the biggest and most consoling passage from Jesus that is found in the Gospel of Matthew, which is the passage of, come to me, those who are burdened, come to me, those who are suffering, because my yoke is light and
my burden
is light. Yeah. So that passage is one of the most consoling passages from the Gospel, in my opinion.
It's in Luke as well, but in different words, and it doesn't say all of it. It's shorter and different words.
Yeah.
In Matthew, it's much more.
It's much more. Yeah, exactly. So he has this mandate, let's say, to be that bridge and to see and to kind of make that assurance that Jesus was the Messiah. And most importantly, giving that voice and putting those who are suffering excluded at the center of why Jesus was there. And even now, if we compare 2024, 2024 years, we're still, it's a different scenario. We don't struggle very much. The world doesn't struggle very much in the material sense, even though some parts of the world still struggle. But the whole world is still struggle in terms of our moral evolution. So we're still in that suffering, right? We're still in that exclusion in a different context. So that is to say that the Spiritism, the Gospel, it still has its importance, and it's still that guidance for us to navigate the challenges that we do have in our moral evolution. So let's take a look at now of what happens. What happens before the Sermon on the Mount? And I'm going to do a little bit of reading straight from the Good News. So let's start. In the early days of the apostle, a small group of unfortunates sought for Levi or Matthew. So this is just before Jesus hasn't proclaimed the Sermon on the Mount, who was in the comfort of his home. Interest that, and you're going to see Humberto de Campos uses a lot of adjectives just to really characterizes the life of Levi in the comfort of his home. He was able to afford a home. So he was there. They wanted explanations about the gospel of the kingdom in order to work with more decisiveness in their efforts to observe the teachings of Christ. So people were there, the people that were suffering. It's like, oh, I heard about Jesus. I heard about what he is doing. We need to go there and see, how can I use that information? How can I use those teachings to really help myself, right? So they went and looked for Levi. But the city tax collector expressed a certain strangeness. Like if people are, at that time, those that are suffering, is that why they're here? So you're going to see, and you're going to see how Levi treated those folks that were not doing well as they approached Levi. So Levi said to the unfortunates who sought him, after all the new kingdom will bring together all sincere and goodwill hearts, who wish to be united as children of God. But what can you do in the situation in each you find yourselves? So those, and you're going to see there were three that were there, and Levi will talk about each one of them. And it's like, I'm not sure that you can help. I'm not sure that you should be here, which is very strange, right? And turning to the three of them who were his personal acquaintance, so Matthew knew about them, he spoke with conviction. Lisandro, what will you be able to accomplish since you're crippled? Manco. And you, Aquila, weren't you abandoned by your own family under the weight of serious accusations? And you, Paphos, would you be able to build anything in light of your current afflictions? How do you feel about that? So you go, you're looking for help, something that is promised, and then Levi, one of the disciples, said, but the three of you, what can you do? You have all these challenges. You are not 100%. What do you think you can do? How you're gonna help with Jesus' kingdom? What was passing through Levi's mind when he looked into those three searching for help?
Maybe that they need certain qualifications.
Exactly. Or that they didn't maybe deserve. It's like, no, you don't deserve. We need someone that is good. With someone that is like fully prepared. Right?
You failed the job interview.
It's like, it looks like he was interviewing, right? I need to hire the best resources to really build the kingdom of Jesus, right? So how many times do we do that with our own selves? First, how do we react sometimes when we need for help? And then we say, but I think I don't deserve. Maybe because we believe in the Spiritism doctrine, we believe we had past lives. Maybe, I'm here and I need to suffer. Because I was evil. Joguei pedra na cruz. Né? I was evil, I did all the things wrong, and I don't deserve whatever help, or I'm not capable to even follow Jesus as our master and our guide. It's like I'm not eligible, right?
I need to improve myself first before I do it.
Exactly, yeah. And that is something like personal. When I started here at FSS, when we started kind of talking about doing lectures, it's like, what am I going to do in front of all those people? Because the one that needs to be seated there, listening, right? But no, we are all capable. We're all here, and we all deserve Jesus and God's love. And it's through this experience, through the challenges, that I will get better. Otherwise, if Jesus was here just for those that are good, in good shape, we're just here as tourism. Yeah, we're just evolved spirits, and we're just here to hang out. We didn't need spiritual a spiritual center. We didn't need the earth. Because the earth, as we know, as Kardec described in the Gospel According to Spiritism, the earth is similar to a hospital. It's similar to a prison. It's similar because we are here because we need to heal. Because we need to educate ourselves. Because we need to learn what not to do. And then we learn what to do. Through the divine mercy, Jesus and God gives this opportunity for us to incarnate here on this earth as many times as required, so we can learn and we can avoid the mistakes that we made in the past. Otherwise, God would not be just if we only had one single chance. And then it's like, good luck. Now you lost it. What happens? Right? So this is Levi's attitude or Levi's behavior for those that were so looking forward to listen from Jesus and see, how can I take those words and really change myself? And he was like, no, it's not for you. I think for me was, how many times am I doing that to myself? Because if I'm able to kind of reflect on that, and I start changing my pattern and changing my line of thought and how I deserve God's mercy, how I deserve and how I'm able to take those teachings and apply into myself, I can also do to others. Right? I got to start with myself and then do that with our neighbors, with our brothers and sisters and humanity.
You can't give what you don't have.
We can give, yeah, exactly. If I'm doing that to myself, most certain I will do that to other folks. Right?
I also think that doing the self-evaluation, like sometimes we don't even realize that we're doing it to ourselves, but we realize more when we're evaluating how we deal with others.
Mm-hmm.
Am I being very judgmental? And am I doing like
Levi?
Because that could be another way to perceive how we are with ourselves.
Yep.
If I'm very strict with some things, if I'm very judgmental, it's because I have these within me. So of course I'm going to treat myself the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I don't realize it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we take the cornerstone of spiritism, outside charity, there is no salvation, right? We know that charity starts within our own self, right? It's like loving our own self, being just and charitable with our own selves. And then we can transport, we can overflow all of that to others. And you're right, if someone is asking for our help, someone close, family, friends, or someone that we don't even know, if we are acting like Levi, which sometimes I caught myself doing it, especially those ones that we don't know. It's like, no, I think you don't sometimes, not that you don't deserve, but I don't want to be involved with anything of this, right? That can be a little bit of reflection of how I am treating my own self. It's one point of us that we can take into consideration and see, what does that mean for myself first, so I can help others.
And another thing I want to just make a comment is like how those three men, they didn't think about that. They just offered. They just won. They were there. They didn't think about their weaknesses or whatever as something detrimental to doing that. And how many, as the point, like it just touched me because they had like visible or like
visible challenges,
and they still felt that they can contribute. And sometimes we all have our difficulties, right? But just to not let them not see how we are, our possibilities.
And that journey is a tough one. It is tough. It requires a lot of courage, be brave, because sometimes when we go into that self-knowledge, we will find things that we thought that we had solved, but maybe not, right? And we go through not only, and I like what Alberto de Almeida said, with our inner child that was hurt. And there's a lot of things that happen in this own incarnation, right? From since I was born until now, every one of us, we went through a lot of stuff, right? But then there's other patterns and other behaviors from other incarnations. So it's a compounding effect. Yeah, it's this compounding effect really makes ourselves, right? And sometimes we've been acting and doing the same way, not over years, but over incarnations, right? Several times. We create those habits that are that way, is that pattern in my mind. When I'm faced one situation, I act that way, right? I've been doing that so long that I only know that way. But then as we start identifying those, like, but that way, I'm not getting what I need. I'm not feeling happy. I'm not feeling that I'm doing the right thing. To change that's even to identify what it is, that's a task of itself. Everything starts with the knowledge and awareness and recognizing what it is. Because if you don't know what it is, how you know what to change and how to change. And sometimes that inner child that is hurt, sometimes that is too hurt, that maybe we don't want to listen because it's too much. And every one of us will kind of see when we are prepared and what we can do with that inner child. Knowing that the time is of God. It's God's time. We're not in a rush here. I like to say, it's like, who's going to get better? After all we think this carnate is like, I was faster than you. It's not a competition, right? it's like, I told you, I was going to do better than you. No, everyone has their pace, their time, right? And Vitor talked a lot about when we start comparing, that's a route that we don't want to go. Because everyone else we have our strengths, we have what we need to do, what we're capable to do, and it's not about competition, right? So, continuing. So now, Levi he crushed. He crushed the expectations of those three people. So the challenged individuals were crestfallen, like cabisbaixo, right? And humiliated. And only then they finally recognize their grievous shortcomings. So it's like, they kind of have that self-realization. It's like, oh my God, I do really have shortcomings, right? I do really have challenges. Because Matthew just really hammered down that onto us.
And he's a Jesus follower, so he might know what he's
exactly.
talking about.
Look at the power of the words. Look at the power of what we say, not only to ourselves, but to our neighbors and anyone else, any other human beings that we're saying in words. Those rude words, the same way that rude words can create damage, can also help healing, right? So Levi's rude words had awakened them. Endless pain had taken them in. So again, just the importance, again, always, not only when we talk to others, but when we talk to ourselves. Be gentle with our own selves. Like self-welcome, whatever we found, as bad or as good, is embrace. It's not shove it down and like, bad Luis, you're worthless, or how dare you did this, or you've done that. It's about, okay, yeah, have that. Let's have that empathy. Let's embrace that, welcome that, and see what can we do in order to start some change, and what we need to do. Maybe ask for help, and all the other things that we have from a spiritual side of it, and also from a material side. We are in the both aspects. It's not only spiritual, and it's not only material. It's the combination of both. And There was a passage in the book called Entre o Céu e a Terra, between the earth and heaven, between heaven and earth, where the spirits, they had specific lessons on how to manage their voice once incarnated. Because the power that our voice and our words carry is strong, and it can really impact all of us. The one that is sending and the one that is receiving that. And we know that in all encounters and situations, in a family, in a work environment, sometimes some words can really put us crestfallen and humiliate us and put us in a state of mind that really we can struggle and really hurt us. So another call, just how Levi did, be self-aware on how we're doing that with others and with our own selves. So now Levi did what he thought was right to do. Like those three there, shortcomings, not like I'm not going to hire them. Failed. But then Jesus was approaching Levi's house, and Levi was excited. It's like, haha, I just gotta save some work for Jesus, right? I'm gonna like filtering and selecting some of those folks. So after, HR, it's like HR. I like to say that, and you're gonna see a passage later. Levi, if we translate a little of the words from that time in this passage to what we are having now, it's like Levi was building a startup, right? Like he needed to find that product and that thing, and he needed to hire the best developers and the best resources at that time. He was in that mindset. But Jesus comes, and let's see what Jesus how Jesus guides and how Jesus orients Levi in what he did. So after a few moments, Jesus entered Levi's or Matthew's house, accompanied by Andrew, where they start talking lively. At one point in the conversation, the tax collector naively reported early occurrences with a smile. Right? It's like, gotcha. He joyfully finished his report with these words. What could the kingdom of gospel achieve with those cripples and beggars? It's like, what are we going to accomplish? How are we going to sell our products? How are we going to solve the world's problem with those? But suddenly, recalling the other fellows were poor and humble individuals, he added, it is fair to expect something from the fishermen of Capernaum. They are fearless and strong men. See? He was like, okay, those there, they had some qualities.
You have a few redeeming
Yes, yeah. Like I have some exceptions. Yeah. I'm going to open exception. And they do a good job. But I don't see how to accept the contribution of the unfortunate and the defeated who seek us. Who seek us, right? So, good intentions. He wanted to do something with the kingdom of Jesus, with the kingdom of gospel. Even recognizing the fishermen who might not have a lot of knowledge, but they were strong and they could do a good job. But the ones that are lame or crippled, they could move, not possible. So, filtered out, and let's keep the line running and going and see who we can hire. So let's see now what Jesus did to Levi. What do you think he did? Slap? Slap on the hands like, Levi, listen up. Again, I told you. It's like, how you're not understanding? That's not the thing that we're looking for. So Jesus stared at the disciple and with deep zeal, com zelo profundo, spoke with patting him lightly on the shoulders. So Alberto de Campos, he does such a phenomenal job using those adjectives and using it, trying to demonstrate how Jesus was patient, how Jesus was not judgmental, right? Because as we mentioned, like I said, I told you, or I'm not telling you again, because sometimes we lose patience, right? Sometimes, yeah. That's what we would have done. It's like, I'm not telling you again. You are going to be fired, right? I'm going to find someone else, right? But
no bonus.
No bonus. Yeah, you're not getting any extra. And again, this is another characteristic that we can take. I'm not saying that we'll be like Jesus at this point, but we can learn with Jesus. As we face something in us, can we practice that deep zeal with us? Com aquele zelo, can we zeal for our own selves the same way that Jesus did with the disciples? Can we be kind to ourselves the same way that Jesus did? Can we try not to lose patience with our own selves? Because sometimes we repeat the same mistake over and over and over. And I also like to, every time that I say that, I always like to preface what Emmanuel says, right? Sometimes we will also have the divine mercy. We can make as many times the mistakes that we are willing to make those mistakes. But Emmanuel calls for a reflection. If we are making the same mistake over and over and over and over, getting the same result over and over and over, pause and reflect. Are we being stubborn? Are we being stubborn and doing the same thing, expecting a different result? Right? Emmanuel is very black and white. Sometimes I like when he kind of dá puxão de orelha. When it's like,
puxão de orelha e voadora no peito.
Because sometimes we're just being stubborn and we are not opening ourselves to, okay, Luis, you're doing Y to solve X and you're getting something that you don't like, again, using Y again, Y again, Y again. Stop being stubborn and do X or do A, do B, do C. At least try and see if there's something different will come out of that.
Can I just draw another parallel? Like historically speaking, at the time, the Jewish people were expecting a king, a warrior, somebody who was going to be superior to everyone else. They were expecting a Messiah that was going to put together an army. The zealots were there waiting for him, and they were supposed to crush the Romans. So they wanted to defeat the Romans. So the Messiah had to be above and beyond anything else.
Yeah.
And it's not different from how we see ourselves. In our society, it has always been like, what's the definition of a successful person? Like for me to be successful, it is a competition. Yeah. I have to be better than you, I have to be better than you, I have to be better than everybody. So we do compare, we compete with others and with ourselves. And whenever we don't achieve whatever our crazy expectations were, like the Jewish people expected that crazy king that would crush everybody, when we fall short of our own expectations, that's when we started crushing ourselves like Matthew did with the 4-3 guys.
Yeah.
And Jesus comes preaching something completely different. He comes preaching love. So for those 3 humble guys, that was their hope, because while all the Pharisees and all the people who were up top took care of Judaism, they were like just little ants there. But when Jesus comes, they see their opportunity to be part of the whole instead of a nothing that nobody will notice.
Yeah.
And we do that to ourselves as well.
Yeah.
We achieved something, but because it wasn't that much more, we put ourselves down and say, not good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think like the other thing is, like over 2,000 years ago, Jesus comes and he shows us that being successful, like, are the ones who serve others.
Yeah.
And we still think that we measure success about how many people we have serving us.
Yes.
In these materialistic societies, just like how many employees or how much you achieved in regards to material belongings.
Yeah.
And he is just saying the exact opposite. Yeah. And we didn't get it And so many things have been done in the name of Jesus and religious, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to see
And it
it.
says, like,
Yeah.
later in this
Later.
chapter, he
Gives an
really
example.
explains
Yeah,
that.
exactly what you just said about building stuff and shooting and killing people, right?
And building temples, and
Temples,
putting
yeah.
stone on top
Yeah.
of stone, and just like materialistic, making a place for God.
Yeah.
And that's not what
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
was saying all the time.
Yeah. So, in his affectionate preaching, Jesus has said that his love had come for all who were grieving and feeling anguish in their heart. When the Master arrived, they experienced the restoration of their energies. Joyful, they kept their promise regarding the just and good Father, who loved the unhappiest children, renewing in their hearts the purest of all hopes. So it's important. It's every one of us. Those that might have committed the worst things that we cannot imagine, someone doing that. That as well. There's no exception for the entire humanity, incarnated and discarnated. All of us deserve God's mercy, and all of us will learn and will get to that relative happiness and perfection. No one will be left behind. The gospel is for all of us. But all of us will find our own time, because Jesus works and God's works in our own hearts. And each one of us will find that time. And it's not up to myself forcing my loved one, say, yeah, do it now or change it right now. It's individually. That's the law of progress. That's the law of responsibility. That's the law that each one of us will find that time and will follow and will make the change that is required. So that's certainty that God gives to us. And I think question 115 from the Spirit's book, where they say, are all the spirits created ignorant? And they said, yes, all ignorant. And we have to do our work, do our change. Some will go faster, some will go a little bit slower, but all will get to that relative perfection and evolve. No one will be left behind. Since the gospel, and continues, Jesus continues, since the gospel is the good news, how is not to be God's message from them? The sad and forsaken in the immense human family. The victors of the earth do not need good news. In the mishap of lives, individuals hear the voice of God more loudly. And isn't that true? What is the time that we really hear God's message and Jesus' message? Is that when you're all like, yeah, I got it, or I got whatever I think was good for me? It is at that time? Usually not. Sometimes, even on that time, we forget to be thankful and express our gratitude to whatever we got. But it is in the time of more suffering, of more pain, that we really, it's like, oh, this is hard. How can I use the teachings, and how can I pray, and how can I connect to God, to Jesus, to my guardian angels, to go through the challenges that I have to go through. So that those moments, as the three men, that is the time that we really need that message, and we really need that hope that Jesus was able to provide to us. And Jesus continues, seeking the oppressed, the afflicted, and the slandered, we feel them so close to heaven in their hopes that recognize in the tranquility that they reveal a sublime reflection of the presence of our Father in their spirits. Have you observed any victor of the world with a higher concern than to defend the fruit of their material victory? when we got it, it's like, I did it. This is my result. This is what I was able to produce. Again, forgetting to be grateful and forgetting to see that everything is lended to us. Yeah, it's like, I did it. I'm good, right? Levi felt moved and enjoying a little pause, he exclaimed somewhat disappointedly. It's like, I missed the point. Lord, my observations only come from my intense desire to hasten acelerar, to make it faster, the supremacy of the gospel among those who rule the world. Again, good intentions. He just wants to make things faster, right? But that's not the intention. Again, we're not in a competition.
Like Judas, he thought that that's a show of, what's the word in English? Pride. Like,
Mm-hmm.
well, Jesus, you're not going fast enough.
Yeah.
Let's make this faster.
Yeah. So this is the passage that you and Yuju mentioned. The master is like, okay, let me draw for you. Let's explain to you a little bit better. So he started, because Levi was with that mindset. We need to build things. That we need to have people change the kingdom, build monumental stuff. And then the master said, the master started with conviction. God rules the world and love does not act with apprehension. We don't need to start like, oh my God, tomorrow or next week or next year. Levi or Matthew, let us imagine if the victors of the earth come to us lining up with their weapons. Let us picture some Roman generals arriving in Capernaum with their numerous and bloody trophies, affirming their willingness to accept the kingdom of God and offering themselves to cooperate. So that's not, imagine that, the war and the things that would happen, and that's not the point that God was trying to make.
And like, since he was being selective with the Jewish. Jesus asked, what if a Roman wants to join us?
Exactly, yeah.
A Gentile. How dare them?
Because they are not unarmed from the advantages of the victor, they would build sumptuous stone temples, in whose construction they would fight hard for inferior hegemonia. I can't say the word in English. Hegemonies. Some would wish superb palaces. Others would undertake the construction of wonderful gardens. And then we start putting all the things externally. It's not more about the kingdom and the changes in ourselves. It's about things externally, which we're still doing a little bit. Maybe less, and we know that along the history of humanity, that's what happened. A lot of people killed others in the name of God, in the name of Jesus. And if the message, if the law, it's about love, justice, and charity, it doesn't align, right? But at that time, that's what they mentioned, what they thought. Someone that was powerful, strength, and we need to rule the world, right? So pureness of heart is inseparable from simplicity and humility. It excludes all idea of selfishness and pride. This was why Jesus took infancy as the symbol of purity and humility. I should preface that. So with all that misunderstanding of Levi, of building stuff and combat, what Jesus preached and the core message of Jesus is about simplicity. We don't need huge things. We don't need huge material castles, shining stuff. What we need is that love and that simplicity. And that's why I wanted to bring this passage about simplicity and about humility. Because Jesus demonstrated that from his birth, where he was born in that manjedoura, can say manger, in the middle of nothing, with only animals being there. And that is something that it's a call to us to implement and to guide us in all of our efforts to live a simple life, a life with humility, a life where we cherish those moments, if it's struggle, if it's happiness, that we see the purpose. We are grateful, the time to be grateful, and we can ask for help, the time that we can ask for help. Because sometimes we, and I sometimes I think, I don't need help. I can do this. It's like I know all the books, or I know it's sometimes it's crazy. It's like I don't want to talk to anyone because I know all the stuff, but I just know. And even I don't know all the stuff first, and I don't know yet how to apply some of those teachings, some of those learnings. I don't know, but even though I'm stubborn with myself and think that I can do all by myself, and we can't, right? Being that humble, it's part, and it's a key principle in following Jesus' teachings and being successful in the sense that we can accomplish what we can accomplish while incarnated in this earth. So under the pretext of fighting in the name of heaven, they would potentially, so he gives a little bit more visuals and more explanation. They can spread fires, devastation across the earth, and would it be fair, Levi, to work to fulfill the will of our Father by annihilating his children or siblings? Like, if Levi was not getting at that point, like he was being very black and white. Listen, if we go to this route, this is the result. And that, I'm telling you, that is not what we are here to do. Let me just... oh, you have 5 minutes. So the bed of pain, the exclusion for all modern facilities of life, the incredulousness of their beloved, the sores and the scars of the spirits are lights that God ignites in the dark night of humanity. Levi, we must love intensely the unfortunate individuals of the world. So here, not only loving those that we see suffering, but loving our own selves with our own struggles, right? What else? Sorry, I lost myself here. And then, so after that, Jesus went and did the Sermon on the Mount. So I just skipped a little bit. And Levi was able to kind of absorb all the Beatitudes, right? Everything that Jesus was proclaimed, and how those Beatitudes, all of them, were all for those that were suffering. And it was kind of a formula, right? For those who were suffering, that's the kingdom. He would give all the results, because all of them deserved to be happy and deserve God's mercy and deserve to do all the work that it was required to be done so they can fulfill their journey. And after that, it's in the end of the sermon, Levi embraced the crippled Lysandro with his sincerity of his faithful soul. The master gazed at him tenderly and said, Levi, my heart rejoices with you today, because blessed are all those who hear and understand the word of God. So now Levi really is like, okay, we're not building our startup. We are here, and everything that Jesus has to say and the teachings are for those that are facing challenge, the cripple, whatever what they have. And I kind of bolded the last, blessed are those who hear and understand. Because sometimes we just hear. Sometimes I just hear the words of God, Jesus, the spirits, Emmanuel, but understanding That's a different that's a different
That's
chapter.
what Jesus meant when he said those who have eyes to see and
Yeah.
ears to hear.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's interesting how to see that change from Levi and how when he kind of the emotions kind of took over his soul. And I think Levi had his ego, right? His ego was kind of more shining at that point, and how he enlightened his ego, understanding what is the purpose and what's the invitation for us to enlighten our own egos and understand the purpose and what we can do to change our own selves. That's it. Right on time. Any questions?
Just a comment.
Yeah.
Highly recommend the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapters 5 and 6 and 7. And as Victor mentioned in a lecture a couple months ago, Gandhi, who wasn't even Christian, said
Mhm.
that even if all the books in the world were burned, as long as the Sermon on the Mount remained, humanity would be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but for me, what most touched me is how I see myself. In Levi's behavior. Still, sometimes in the work here at FSS, in my professional work, in my family, sometimes it goes unnoticed, and then it's like, oh, why did I think whoever I had to deal with did not deserve, and I deserve more, just because I'm aware. I just heard the word of God. So seeing and how that's why I maybe recommend you to reading the text, how we still have that component of Levi, and sometimes it goes unnoted, and how we should be kind of being aware and see some of those attitudes that we have. Yeah. Good. All right. Go to our prayer. Okay, yes, good. Thank you, Victor. Again, for those who arrived a little bit later, December 8th is our Christmas special event at the Shriners, where we had our barbecue early August. 11 a.m. and we'll be sending a little bit more information. Usually it's a potluck, delicious food. We're going to have our talk there, and after that, lunch at that place. Yeah. Good. All right. So, connected that we still are with God, with Jesus, our Master in our garden ages. Express again our gratitude to be here, our gratitude to Jesus, to God, to all the spirits that guide us, to the spirits that help with books and this passage from the Good News, where we could learn a little bit more of how we see ourselves in Levi's attitudes before the Sermon on the Mount, and how we can be self-aware. And if we notice that, how we can be kind, how can we zeal for our own selves, and how can we welcome some of our challenges, and how can we may be aware of those and start looking into ways with simplicity, with humility, to start making the changes that we are able to make as incarnated in this life. Be grateful again for the second home of love, for all the teachings, and for all the light that shines for us and for the city with the Jesus teachings and this consoling doctrine that is Spiritism. Let's ask that our week, the rest of our Sunday, be blessed with love, with peace, with hope, and with compassion, first to ourselves and to our brothers and sisters and humanity. So be it.